Hi, I'm Julie Hansen, and you are listening to possibly the best named podcast in the business, the SaasHoles.
Welcome to SaasHoles, a show dedicated to issues within the software as a service industry. We are revenue ops with a
edge.
Not bad. Jamie, Jason, KG, and myself, Pete, have a combined 100 years of making interesting decisions. Please subscribe to our weekly newsletter. Today, our guest is Julie Hansen with an E. Julie is a virtual selling thought leader and the author of 3 sales books, Look Me in the Eye, Using Video to Build Relationships with Customers, Partners, and Teams. It was named the top sales book of 2021. Way to go, Julie. Act Like a Sales Pro and Sales Presentations for Dummies. I think I like that title. Through her workshops, coaching, and selling on Video Masterclass, Julie helps sales leaders and teams to leverage video in a way that drives sales. In addition to a successful career in sales and leadership, Julie worked as a professional actress, appearing in over 75 plays, commercials, films, and television shows, including, Jamie, your favorite show, HBO Sex and the City. But before we get to Julie, we got a sponsor for the show, NeuroNoodle. Hey, parents of athletes, get a doodle of their noodle, which is a brain map before the season starts, so you have a baseline to compare it to in case something happens. Hey, you get a physical every year, right? Well, get a mental physical. Get a brain checkup now, neuronoodle.com. KG.
Did you just pick on Jamie? He missed last week.
I missed the last couple weeks.
Well, you can kind of both play. I'll start with you, Jamie. Jamie.
What, Pete?
2 windmills are standing in the field. One asks the other, what kind of music do you like? The other one says, I'm a big metal fan. Hey, KG.
Yes.
The other windmill turns to the other and says, hey, do you like blowing in the wind? The other replies, I'm not a fan. Leave us some comments on our blog at SaasHoles.net. Got any shout outs, KG?
I do. God, the dad jokes get me every time. I'm reading and writing the show notes and I say to myself, that's a stupid joke. And then I laugh every time.
Okay. Just more for me to edit. Keep going.
Now I love it. All right. I got a shout out here to Jumpin' Joe McCarthy. Happy birthday, Joe McCarthy. Used to work together at business.com. We call him Jumpin' Joe McCarthy, an all-around fun guy. Congratulate Trenton Platt for being promoted to Director of Performance Marketing at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Big deal there now that they're opening back up again. It's good stuff there. And congratulations to Robin Morocco. We used to work together at ZipRecruiter. She got promoted to VP of Inside Sales at ZipRecruiter. And then finally, my good friend Tom Odegaard. He just got promoted to VP of People at ZipRecruiter. He taught me what it really meant to have a partner in human resources. So there you go,
Ooh,
Pete.
Not bad. Oh, look, magically, Jamie Carney has some shout outs.
Yeah, I got some in there, right? I want to give him a promotion. He got promoted to Senior Ops Manager at RNB Capital. 2-year anniversary to a former coworker of mine, Chris Michaud, funny guy. And another former coworker of ours, Chris Shelley, just recently got promoted to CRO, Chief Revenue Officer at Frank Connect.
Thank you. So hey, Carney, you talking through a walkie-talkie?
I'm talking through my wireless headset. I apologize. I thought I brought my wired one. I'm at a remote location.
Did you get it with a Groupon? Keisha Shams for starting a new position as Enterprise Sales Director at Spins. Matthew Witt starting new position as Senior Analyst, Capital Investments at Equity Lifestyle Properties. Tony Waugh for 5 years at Pop Menu. Kevin Drolet, 3 years at KDRO Consulting. And my boy Casey Erlacher, 7 years at Inglewood Construction. You know Erlacher, don't you, Carney?
The son of Brian Erlacher. In fact, I was at a wedding with Casey Erlacher.
Or his brother.
His brother was invited, but he couldn't make it. But I've been. He was an usher at my friend's wedding.
Casey is the brother.
I know he is.
Okay. You said son.
Or did I say son? I meant brother. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Very good. Hey, Sarah Longley, VP of Growth at Privetta. Way to go, Longley. Melanie Marinelli, 1 year at Sprout Social. Tekla Predigo, SPHR, 9 years at the Big CB. And Kyle Singles, 3 years at Cameo. Way to go, Kyle. This time of year, we get a lot of shout outs. It's just that season. You know what I mean, guys?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Julie, KG, how did we get together today? KG, how do you know Julie?
Well, actually, this is the first time Julie and I have actually met face to face, but I saw that she was actually my good friend Lori Richardson reposted the announcement of Julie's new book. And when I read about it, I thought we have to get her on the SaasHoles show. So I reached out to her way back when, and finally today's the day. But that's it. That's how I know. I know her of legend.
Wow.
4 books.
It's not the biggest legend I've ever heard, but it works.
It
Well,
works. It works.
It is pretty hard to get authors on a podcast. Julie, had
Yeah.
four books. Can you go through the titles
Sure.
for us?
Yes. So newest one, Look Me in the Eye, using video to build relationships with customers, partners, and teams. Sales presentations for dummies, which I got a lot of flack about, even though I think the Dummies is brilliant. The way we all like those tactics, right? But
we love Dummies.
scoff at them, right? And then my first book was Act Like a Sales Pro, which was really about how to use acting skills in the sales profession and the correlation there and how can make us better salespeople.
Tell us about your new book then. Look Me in the Eye.
Yeah, Look Me in the Eye is the new
Video.
book. Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure.
Because video is such a big proponent in today's world.
It certainly is. It certainly is. And, it's interesting. I've taught presentation skills, demo skills for years. And I would, when I would go to workshops with a lot of SaaS companies, I'd say, okay, how many do remote presentations or demos? And they, a percentage would. And I say, okay, how many turn their camera on? And be like, oh, no. Like I have tape over my camera just in case I slip up and turn it on. It's like, all right. So it was so hard to get people to see the value. And certainly the switch was flipped with the pandemic. But what happened was I realized very quickly that, while we threw all these tools and technology at salespeople, like, yeah, just get on Zoom, just get a camera, just get a microphone. Nobody has any idea how to talk in this entirely new medium. And it was much like as an actor, when, most actors, you start out doing theater. Maybe it's different now, but when I did, you started doing theater for a couple of years. And then when I had my first audition for a TV show, I went in just kind of expecting it to be very similar to a theater audition. And they start the camera and it's like slate and say your name. And it's like, oh my gosh, what do I look? What do I do with my hands? What do I usually do with my hands? Like just, so awkward. And of course I did not get that part. But I did what actors do when they want to move into, acting in front of a camera, which is I took classes to help me learn how to transition. And so I saw these salespeople just trying to figure it out on their own or getting really bad advice from people who never worked on camera. And it was confusing. And so I started, I put some videos together and created a master class, the Selling on Video master class, and started coaching salespeople. And out of that, I heard, 1,000 salespeople, like their challenges with being on video. And it goes beyond, how do I do my lighting or, it's some very, it makes people very vulnerable. Most people are very hard on themselves. So it's hard to make improvement because you're so critical. So the book really came out of all those conversations and what salespeople really need to know to do this job that you never went into sales to do, right? Nobody went into sales to go be a set designer, an actor, a lighting technician, a director. Here you are, right? So trying to make that job easier for them.
Here's probably my biggest challenge when it comes to video is eye contact, right? Like how do you, like I'm watching you and you're looking right, it looks like you're looking right into my eyes, but I know I'm looking down and slightly to the left of my computer screen because that's where you're located.
Right.
That's such a difficult thing for me to get used to, is just looking this way. How do you coach anything on that stuff? Because
I do. I have an entire chapter in the book on it, and I coach on it. It is one of the most counterintuitive skills and that we have to learn. And But it's vital because, that's why the book is called Look Me in the Eye, because we're having all these conversations that are basically like sitting across from somebody, having a cup of coffee and looking at your phone. I would not, if I was pouring my heart out to someone, telling them my problems and they were looking down, I'd be hard pressed to think you cared, right?
Mhm.
Or you were listening, or I knew what you were doing, because we only have this frame. So if you're not looking at the camera, I don't know what you're looking at. Even though logically we might say, well, he's probably looking at me on their screen. Buyers aren't going to make excuses for us. They don't care how hard it is for you. All they know is how they feel. And, relationships are built on emotion, not logic. We're not going to make it logical, well, that's okay. I know he cares about me. I know he's listening. I know he's interested. So yes, it's a skill. It's a learned skill. It takes, it takes some work and some practice, but I, teach a method to do that and to practice it, because it's one of the most important things you can do. Because right now we got a lot of people that are technically connected, but they don't feel connected, right?
Well, let's get super tactical then.
Okay.
How about 5 or more real tactical tips that our listeners can take away right away in the first few minutes of listening to this podcast on how to get better at doing this? 5 tactical takeaways from your newest book.
Sure. So the first thing we'll just play on that is, if you're not looking at the camera, you're not connecting with your audience. And that's just a fact, right? Relationship experts say you need to make eye contact about 2/3 of the time to build a relationship. And that's why building relationships virtually is so difficult, right? That's one of the reasons. So making sure, just give you a couple pointers, make sure that, your camera is as close to your eye line as possible. It's likely not going to be a perfect match. However, you can practice that. And also the thing that stops most people from making eye contact is, how do I read body language? Right? I mean, because you're looking at the screen because you want to see what I'm doing, right? So until you understand how to read body language and what on-screen body language, how it differs from in-person body language, you're not going to make good eye contact, right? Because it's not brain science for me to tell you, it's not earth-shattering to say, look at the camera. It's like, oh, okay, got it. You won't do it, right? Unless you understand, how are you going to read this body language? When do I need to look at the camera? When is it okay to look at the screen? Because there's some key moments where you really want to, think about, making that, the only way we make someone feel heard and seen is when we're looking at them, right? And so when are those key moments that really, really matter? And those are the times we often want to look at the screen. So knowing how, when to make eye contact, for how long, and also to read body language. If you look at, so actually everybody, all you guys look at your camera right now. Don't look at me.
Okay. All right.
Okay, look at your camera. We'll do a little test here. Now I'm going to do a couple things and then I'm going to ask you what you see.
Yep.
You turned to the left,
Okay,
you nodded
what'd you
your
see?
head and you went back.
All right.
Pokey.
Hokey pokey. I did the hokey pokey. Yeah, I made some movements. You guys got them all. And you saw that while you were looking at the camera.
It was not easy. It was not easy.
Because we don't consciously use our peripheral vision that much, but we have it. It's a tool. It's a latent skill that we can use to give us some indication of what's happening, right?
And I'm looking at the camera right now and I can still see Pete's beanie that he's wearing.
Right.
Easy, Kim Jong.
Yeah, with the hair. That's fascinating. Well, and Julie, just elaborating a little bit further, I actually read a book a long time ago because I suck at interviewing. I read a book called What Everybody Is Saying. It was a body language book. And I did that so that I could get more tips and information out of the candidates that I was interviewing by reading their body language. You just brought this up and I thought, God, that's fascinating. So, how do you how do you feel about that body language when somebody's leaning back or leaning forward, or, you know, covering their mouth, you know, when they're paying, like, how do you read that kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we form a first impression really quickly, and it's, you know, so fast that it can't have anything to do with what you say, really, you know? And we form that from like just how you appear. So this is your stage, right? And so I would say, you know, you have to think of yourself as like an iceberg when you're on video, because when you're in person, you know, people see the whole iceberg, you know, but now they only see the tip of the iceberg. So everything you communicate has to be in this square, and it has to be supporting what you're saying. Well, you might be able in person to get away with a really flat, you know, expressionless face, but you've got great energy or body language. That might be okay. That is not going to work on video, right? And so we have to be very cognizant of that. And all those things mean something. Like if we're leaning back, I mean, I might be super interested and engaged, but I just look like I'm not, like I'm really kicked back. And what happens, I think people have this, I don't know, people talk about, you know, we'll be on video, just be yourself, just be natural. And of course, I don't want you to be someone you're not, but I also don't want you to be the you that's leaning back, couch, you know, channel surfing on the couch, right? That doesn't read well on the camera, because the camera, we have to understand how the camera and thus your customer reads and interprets certain behavior, because the camera takes away a lot of your natural energy. So people always think they can be very laid back. Well, you're already seated, which is a pretty low energy state. And then the camera takes off about, you know, 20% to 30% of your energy, and you don't have that physical energy coming about. You have to actually bring more energy on video for that to, you know, to really connect with the other person. The first impression of how interested you are in talking to me is what I see on your face, right? And also how I'm positioned. And if I'm positioned here, it's like, oh, hey, great to be here. It's much different than I'm like, hi, I'm, you know, so happy to be here. So I would say get in the camera ready position, which is sit straight up. All you guys sit straight up. You have a little lesson here. And then like hinge forward like 15%. All right. Kind of like you're on the edge of your seat and you can't wait to hear what the other person has to say.
There you go.
Now you don't want to go like too, you know, be a space invader, of course. That means other things.
What about standing? Do you want standing desks? Would you recommend that?
I think standing desks are great. The problem with standing on camera is that very few people can stand still and planted on, balanced on both feet. So you see a lot of like cha-cha back and forth. And those movements, because we're just in this very small space, any kind of movement is really magnified. It can be so distracting, and you know, people just start watching that, you know, if you do something repetitively. Yeah. Fascinating.
What about Pete's big question, and I'm stealing his thunder, is pants or no pants?
I don't care what you got going on underneath, right?
All right, that's one for Jamie.
I saw a picture of some company that had everybody come in wearing what they wore on Zoom during the pandemic. And it was awesome. People had pajama bottoms, there's shorts and flip-flops. I mean, it wasn't anything, you know, they all had some kind of pants on.
Well, I'm sure they came in with pants. They would have probably been fired if they came in with their real underwear on.
Yes.
Pete for sure would have been fired.
One would hope.
Whatever. So, well, the other thing is if you're going back and forth or slouching, I mean, the volume, you know, just editing it, you know,
right.
You take away the emphasis on the wrong syllable when you're going in and out. Just a side note. But Julie, being an actor, you know, one of the things even before this great pandemic, when we had sales teams, we'd always pound over their heads that they should have a script. Do you have any thoughts on having a script before you start a video presentation? If so, how do you do it? How would you use it? How do you use it?
Sure. I have no problem with scripts. I like a good script. I think, you know, there's a lot of people more clever than me in writing, and that's not the problem. It's not the script's problem. It's that we don't teach people how to read from a script, how to take words that they didn't write internalize them and deliver them as if they're their own. That is acting. The fact that we don't teach salespeople that it's a miracle any of them deliver a script and make it sound natural. It really is. So it's a skill. It's taking those words off the page. And there's a process that actors go through to learn that script, not like just word, and then spit it out.
Rehearse.
Learn it, but they're not rehearsing right. They're rehearsing, did I get that word right? Okay, so this, you're going to save you X, Y, Z. It's why are you saying what you're saying? It's knowing all these things. It's knowing what you're trying to, what's your intention? How do you expect your audience to feel about what you're saying? Those layers that we naturally include when we're just speaking from our hearts are missing if you get words from someone else. And I think that a script, and there's variations of how you use a script. Certainly as an actor, like, you miss a word and that's not good. We have a lot more flexibility in sales because we're not a director that's going, hey, the writer has that in there for a reason. You can use, I always say, have some things prepared, because especially on video, there are so many things to manage that if you're trying to come up with great questions and tell a story and have an opening, and you're just going to leave that to chance,
wow,
you are just putting so much pressure on yourself.
My gosh. Well, first of all, Julie, you're Pete and I are like two old school, dyed-in-the-wool inside sales guys. We grew up on scripts, and scripts have become such 4-letter words these days. And people say, well, you have to have plays, run plays. Well, scripts don't work, scripts don't. Well, what I always used to say was, scripts don't work because you don't make them your own. And what I learned, which is what you're saying here, is that I observed that there was actually three levels. I hand you the script and you read the script. Okay, now you're just reading. You don't know what you're doing, but you're just reading the script. And I would watch salespeople read the script for the first time. Then they would get to level 2, and level 2 was memorizing the script. They could put the script down and they can actually say the words. But the third level was the nirvana that you were talking about, which is this internalization and understanding. And that was sort of like, breaking the matrix. They were able to say, oh, now I understand why this is the way it is. And now you can interchange the parts, and you can use your own words, and you can interpret it the way you understand it to convey it to the customer. But there was those 3 levels. So what can salespeople do? How should they rehearse better? If it's not just straight memorization, what can they do to rehearse better?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And I wish more people would listen to this answer. First of all, most salespeople jump too fast to memorize it. The goal is not to memorize it fast. That is never the goal. If you're an actor and you're doing a play, you have, a couple weeks, a month to get off book, right? Because what you're doing when you're reading it is, first of all, of course, reading it, getting kind of familiar with it. And then the work starts with the process of associating meanings with what you're saying and trying out different, intentions. Or you don't want to if you memorize too quickly, you get locked into a cadence and a rhythm and sort of an artificiality. So if you start doing, kind of that, just learning, saying it in, pieces of it in conversation and playing with different intentions, like, well, what if I said this and I wanted them to, get excited about this? And what if I said this in response to an objection, right? And so it has a lot of flexibility to it. You've made it, you're making it more sticky for yourself, and you're also really starting to work it into your body and your voice. And I think most people don't practice out loud enough. They're like, yeah, got it. Okay. And then they spit it out. And, sometimes it's the first time they've heard it when they're, practicing it with their team. And that's not how you memorize. It's a very physical back and forth process.
Love it.
Whom with their significant other, right?
Yeah, you can do it with your significant other, drive them crazy. Absolutely. My fiance at the time always knew my lines just as well as I did.
Amazing.
Oh, hey, as a RevOps person, I always ask about technology. What technology would you recommend for sales reps in terms of video type of stuff? Zoom, Teams, but is there any other underlying technology to help through this process?
Sure. I think this is an interesting question, and I don't want to minimize it, but I think we are so focused. Does anybody not have enough technology now?
Everyone has drunken tool confetti.
Right.
But I would go on. I think that's because the tools are leading the innovation as opposed to the companies looking at the buyer customer journey and buying the tools to help them scale. I think the tools are ahead of where the companies are.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I talk about in the book, I talk about what do you really need to connect with somebody through the camera? All right. So you need, first of all, I said, good sound is almost more important than good video, right? I mean,
Carney, you hear that?
I left my microphone. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Absolute worst.
Okay.
Anyways.
Yeah. But I mean, people will put up with kind of subpar video for a little while, but if they can't really hear you or it's difficult, then you're going to lose them. Certainly having a webcam, an HD, 1080 is, I think, that's baseline. Mm-hmm. And from there, having good lighting. What you want to think about is how can technology help me be seen and heard and communicate better? And so I need to be well lit. I want to look, and what I always stress is, we're in an artificial environment, right? Mm-hmm. So anything we can do to de-emphasize the artificiality of it and look real, right? Look like, make your customer forget that you're talking through technology and feel like they're just sitting across from you having a cup of coffee. That's the experience that I think is most powerful and it's missing. And I can do that with how I connect through the camera and how I carry myself, and lighting can help that, and sound and video, but, and staging, having, a nice background that maybe tells a little bit about you, but, some of these artificial backgrounds, I think they work against you. I mean, think back, because you guys have been in sales for a while, and I was too. Wouldn't you have killed to be invited into a CEO's home, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And to do that, to have that opportunity to sort of break that barrier mm-hmm. on video, and allow them to see you as a real person. Mm-hmm. Because we fought that for so many years, it's another salesperson, send them in, right? And not to take advantage of that, I think is silly.
You can see, Pete and Jamie choose the blurry background. I choose the clear background. And sometimes we actually have a SaasHoles, logoed, background. If I'm hearing you correctly, because of that personal connection you're trying to make yourself a little bit more vulnerable by showing your home, and you got to stage it a little bit. And if I'm hearing you correctly, if your home situation allows for it, share, let people into your home. It helps connect, is what you're saying.
Yes, absolutely. And it is all about, not everybody can do that, I realize. And I would just say, if you do have to use an artificial background, use something very simple. As an actor, background is just that. It's background. It's to support the main character. It's not the show, right? So don't make it the show. I've been on calls with people who have some lion about to eat them, and all kinds of stuff going on, and it's fun for a minute, but then it's just distracting, and it just makes you view someone through a different lens, right?
I blurred my background because it looks like I'm in a booth at Chili's.
Are you?
I'm at a weird.
You're not? There you go, Julie. There you go.
I'm at a WeWork, and it looks like you're at a Chili's booth.
Right.
So Julie, what do you do if the other person won't turn the camera on?
Oh yeah, that's a big problem for salespeople. You'd think we'd never spoke on the phone before, the way people panic about that, right? It's like, oh my God, I can't see him. It's like, have you never made a phone call? But for some reason, it's entirely different. It is really as close to acting as you will get, talking to a camera and not being able to see another person. Actors do it all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a skill there. There's a skill on how we envision the other person, and we speak to them, and we envision them, not just, I'll just put a picture, static picture of them. No, you want to envision them smiling at something you said if it was funny. You want to envision them looking interested. I would say, imagine the best possible reaction, because that will bring out the best in you. But because what happens is 9 times out of 10, salespeople tell me, I just, I look at the camera, I just freak out. It's like, why do you freak out? Because I know they're not looking at me, or they're looking at me like, skeptical. And it's like, why do you assume that people are having such a negative, that they're just back there judging you because they don't have their camera on? That doesn't serve you. It's probably not true. People aren't as unpredictable as, you think. If you say something funny, they're probably smiling. If you say something interesting, they're probably going, huh. But we don't hear a lot of those little cues. The video doesn't pick it up as well. It's got the two-way, sound, and we don't see anything. So we just imagine stillness glaring at us like, what a stupid thing he just said, right? So you really have to get comfortable, because I have given presentations where, I can't see anybody. And I just, I imagine, I'm not 100% sure, but I imagine everybody is engaged and going, oh. And afterwards, I get some feedback. It's like, oh, that was fantastic. It's like, customers aren't going to necessarily tell you that, but they are the same person that is sitting across from you, that is behind your camera. So you have to kind of develop that confidence to speak to that person and see them there.
Back to rehearsing, the people that fumble around trying to find the share button, or the sound doesn't work. And, the old days, we would send ourselves voicemails to hear what we sound like on the phone, leaving a message. Now you can record different pitches, share it with your boss. I don't think a lot of people do that. It just drives me crazy. Everybody thinks they're Second City actors, or just ad-lib their way, and they just give up control.
Right. You mean as far as sending videos?
Practicing their
are not doing,
You have 20 minutes. You can record 20 minutes and see if you get your message across in 20 minutes.
To practice, to record as practice. Yeah, absolutely. I think the days of like fumbling around on video have come to a close. I mean, I think we were very patient with each other the first year, but if this is your job, not to say that technical things don't happen. I had something happen the other day that kicked me out of a meeting or something. Like, that stuff happens and people understand, and you just kind of got to move on. But you really need to up your game. And there are too many variables going on to not know the basics, right? And I think recording yourself, certainly to eliminate any of those, those basics, foundational things that you still need to work on, but also to understand how the other person sees you, how they experience you on their screen is really vital information. Nobody likes to do it. I mean, even as an actor, I'd be like, oh, don't make me watch myself, right? Because all you can see are your flaws. But I talk about in the book about how to review yourself as a director. And a director is just, how can they make this the best experience for the audience, right? It's just an objective. What am I doing that is perhaps distracting from my message, taking away from it? What is supporting it? What might I be able to change that would help me connect more with my audience? And staying focused on those goals can help salespeople from going down the rabbit hole of like, oh, I just look terrible on video and I can't believe,
right.
I should never be on camera. And, that's the hard part, is being.
Okay. So they turn the screen on. What if they're not paying attention to you?
What is the customer doing that means they're not paying attention to? Are they perhaps looking at their screen? Is that not what you are doing when you're talking on the camera?
You see.
Right. So here's the thing. And when I talk about reading body language, it's important to be able to, interpret that body language in the environment you're in. we are trained to sit in front of a screen and be in sort of receiving mode, right? Whether it's a TV, a movie, or iPad, or we're not there to like engage. That's not what we've been trained to do for years and years. And so we sit in front of a computer and we instantly go into receiving mode, especially if I'm meeting with a salesperson and they're going to pitch me something. I'm not there to, engage and be charming and make you feel connected, right? So they're going to be looking at your screen. Just that is how they feel when you're looking at your screen. So when you see that customer look at their screen, they are looking at you most likely. Now, if there's some telltale signs that might mean they are distracted, which it's more concerning to me when the eyes are going kind of sideways, because that means they're reading something as opposed to looking down. Okay. But I think we have to take all this with a grain of salt, because most people do not have good on-screen behavior. And if you take those signs, like every time somebody looks down and you go, oh my God, they're not interested, they don't like this, you are going to be in a panic. And what happens is salespeople, they start rushing, and then they start, checking in every 2 seconds. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? And they just create this whole, nightmare scenario that they were trying to avoid. So
here's one of my pet peeves when it comes to distractions on videos.
What?
Kids. I have too many kids.
Oh,
I feel like a lot of companies, when you first started, everyone was so like, oh my gosh, I can't believe the kid. And then it became the other side, where it's almost like I would be in internal meetings and somebody's working and they have a kid on their lap. I'm like, seriously? Like, I get it that we're at home, but I think you said it as a job. So I just want to say my number one pet peeve, I have 4 kids. They're loud and obnoxious and all of that. And I don't engage them to come sit on my lap and let's do a podcast together or let's talk in an internal call. For those of you listening at home, if you're on a call with me, don't have your kids in there unless you necessarily have to. I get it. We can't avoid it at times, but
we don't care how cute your kids are.
Yeah.
Or the cat walking across the screen.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I was on a call where a person was petting a cat. I was like, oh my gosh, am I talking to an evil villain?
Julie, do you think that comes down to just communication and expectation setting? Hey, my daycare fell through today. Would you mind if my, kids, he's going to be or she's going to be loud in the background? Would you mind if he or she, sat on my lap during the call? Is that a matter of just like let's talk it through? Or in Jamie's instance, Julie, he's basically talking about internal company meetings. Right. Is that a situation where the company should establish a policy for Jamie's pet peeve? But how do you feel about that? I mean, that's so touchy. It's such a touchy subject.
Right.
It is. I'm only saying it on this podcast. I'll never say it internally. So anyone listening from my company, ignore it. I think it's great.
Cat's out of the bag. Right.
Seriously.
Cat's out of the bag. I think setting expectations is good. It's the same, like, when if you're going to take notes, like, as opposed to just looking down the whole time saying, hey, I want to be sure not to miss this. So I'm going to be taking some notes here, that's a great question. I want to be sure I get that right. Let me find it here. Okay. And then deliver it to the camera. And the same with any distractions. I feel much, because I might start to get annoyed, like, well, am I not important enough that you didn't, have your kids in their own room with somebody else? Or I think that if you can set expectations, I think that's best.
Yeah. What are some of the top mistakes that you observed in 2021? Top video mistakes that you observed in 2021?
Yeah, well, we talked about some of them. Certainly the glaring lack of eye contact. Frankly, it's a wonder that any of us feel connected at all with the amount of eye contact that's not happening. So that's certainly at the top. The other thing, when I said people show up on screen pretty passive, that's just a behavior that part of that on-screen, that receiving mode that we fall into. Mm-hmm. And one thing I see salespeople doing a lot is ask a question and then they immediately answer their own question, right? Or because people are very passive on video, right? We've found, you've probably experienced that, but you have a meeting and you say a question and everybody's just like sits there, and it feels terrible as a presenter.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is they answer their own question. Then you've just taught your audience that they don't have to participate. So understanding that people are more passive. And so you're going to have to allow that, I say embrace that pause, because there's a lot going on in that moment. Because as a presenter, again, we think, oh, nobody's going to answer this. Oh, they think it's a stupid question. No, there's actually something happening. The person is thinking, do I have an answer for that? What do I think about it? Do I have an answer? Should I answer this? Is my manager going to think it's stupid if I say this? Maybe he's probably going to answer. All these things is negotiating, debating, deciding. The pressure builds. Finally, somebody will answer it. But I will tell you the number one way to get your question answered on video, besides you got to wait, right, is to ask it to the camera, right? Because if you ask it, if I say, what's on your schedule today? Who do you think I'm talking to?
Yeah, the floor. Jamie's kids.
The floor.
Yeah.
Like I could be talking to any of you, right? Now, if
Yeah.
I ask that to the camera, so what do you have on your schedule today? Each of you probably thinks I'm talking to you, right? Because everybody has their own personal experience on video. So you can use that to your advantage. Honestly, that improves your response rate so dramatically. And it's such a simple thing to do. It's not easy, but it's simple to just ask it, and hold your gaze there, and somebody will answer.
Really, in the world of limited attention spans, the videos seem to be getting shorter and shorter, with shorts, reels, 3 minutes and under. How do you use your videos to help you with your business or sales calls or appointments? Do you have a pre-call video, an ending video, a promotion video? How do you do any of that? Or do you have any suggestions for us? Because we're trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Sure. I do some of all of that, kind of depending, but mostly I do a lot of video tips, and, as a marketing tool, obviously, and to be helpful and entice people to read the book and hire me.
Mm-hmm.
But, those videos, like you said, they are, shorter, everything's getting shorter. But the important thing is with video is to, however you use it, and all those purposes are, can be helpful. I've seen great stats on all of those uses. But it doesn't have to be a perfect video. Like I think some people, pressure themselves into taking, making 10 takes until everything's just perfect. It's not about being perfect. It's about connecting really quickly and adding something of value and getting to the point. I would say cut to the chase. Video, when the camera's on, you kind of got to start in the middle of the conversation. You don't have time to ramp up. And most salespeople, or most people in general, when they get on camera, it usually takes them about 20 seconds to really hit the right energy level, the right connection. And you can't do that. You have to do your work before you get on camera, get in that state, imagine yourself having that conversation with that person. You're just in the middle of conversation. It's like, hey, so I have this great idea. I wanted to run by you. Instead of like, hi, this is Julie and I work for blah, blah, blah. That's like delete an email, right? They're going to trash it.
I always say to reps, I say it multiple, beat the drum on value, not on your chest. Who cares who you are, just as long as you have the value.
Right,
Focus on
right.
that.
Yeah, because likely, by that point, people are going to know who you are. They can find out before they watch the video. So cut to the chase. Like, what is the most interesting part of what you have to say? Put it up front and start with that, because otherwise you don't have a chance. They're never going to see it, right? Especially if they're busy people. So, and also think about, even if you're doing a lot of videos, you want to really form that connection. You want to think about, you are talking to a person. Again, this is acting. And if I don't see that person in my mind's eye, and I'm not, talking to you and trying to connect. And so here's what I think. And, I'm really hoping this, resonates with you, because I'd love to have a conversation. And I'm not thinking of you individually, and I'm just talking to a bunch of people. It's going to be very, so what I'd like to do is come in and talk to you, and, I have some great ideas, and you're going to look like, a robot, right? You have to really, video is a very personal thing. So you have to personalize it for yourself. And everyone is going to an individual, no matter whether you use it 100 times, for everybody.
Now, do you farm it out? Do you do it yourself? Do you use like a Hootsuite, a one spot to distribute your videos for the new people out there that are trying to promote their brand?
Yeah, so I do. I mean, I post a lot on LinkedIn, and then I do videos through BombBomb, and I've used OneMob as well. I think they're good, but there's a lot of good services, and I think people get really enamored with the metrics and who watched it and all that, which is good information. But again, video is such a personal thing that I see a lot of salespeople get really crushed. Like, well, I made that video and nobody watched it. And,
and they quit.
Yeah, right. You get discouraged. And it's important to just, not take everything so personally, and just remember people are super busy.
Yeah.
And, look, review, and see if there was something maybe you could have done better, or, improved, gotten to the point, made it more interesting, made it, been more, personal. But don't beat yourself. Don't use that as a tool to go, well, I'm not good at this. Right.
Is there any other takeaways out of your book? I mean, there's just so many nuggets there. Is there any other takeaways that we can pick from your new book?
One thing I see a lot with salespeople, and it's one of the bigger mistakes too, is when we do get on camera, we talked about customers being passive and like looking uninterested. And that is a very typical face. And I call it RBF. And it's not bad.
You could say it on this show.
What's it stand for?
It's resting business face. Resting business face. And it's very blank, right? Boo. You can say the other if you like. But it really is, that's how most people show up on screen. And that's how most salespeople look on screen. So, I'll be coaching a salesperson. I'll go, so that's going to save you $1 million. And I'll stop and I'll say, now, is that good news or bad news? Because looking at your face, I really have no idea. And so I always say, if your face has nothing to say, why are you on video? Right? Are you just proving you're a person? Okay. But this is our real estate, right? If you're not using it to its full purpose,
wow,
then you're missing the point, right? And that's how you connect emotionally with people. Not like you need a mug for the camera, but we need to be more expressive, maybe more so than we were in person.
Sure.
Because this is, your face is in their screen, that they are looking at your face much more than they would in person, where we've got this shared environment. So use that real estate to help you and to further that connection. So avoid resting business face.
Yes. Fascinating.
RBF.
Fascinating.
Well, Julie, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Now, what's the best way for the listeners to learn more about you or connect with you?
Yeah, you can check out my website at Julie Hansen, HANSEN.live. And I've all kinds of videos and blog posts on all different things about, virtual selling and being on video and presentations and demos. Or connect with me on LinkedIn at Julie Hansen Sales Training.
Got it. We'll have all the links in the podcast notes. Make sure we send all of our listeners your way, Julie.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to SaasHoles. On behalf of Jamie, KG, and myself, Pete, we thank you for listening. We ask that you give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter. You can always buy us a beer on Patreon/SaasHoles. We thank you for listening. Cue the music.